On this week's episode of Keys of My Success, I get to speak to a dear friend who has started multiple businesses, grown them all, and then sold them to somebody else. So far, he's done this 4 times, and he continues to build businesses. He's a born entrepreneur who, in his own words, has said, ever since I was a kid, I like to start companies, provide value, find what people really want and need, and figure out how to make people's lives better and easier. My guest today is Mr. Larry Fiorino. Hello and welcome to Secrets of My Success, part of For the Love of Chiropractic podcast series. On each episode, I'll be interviewing one highly successful doctor or business person, asking them what are their 3 keys of success or secrets they've used to make themselves so highly successful. So let's get started with today's show. I recently had the opportunity to catch up with my longtime friend, Mr. Larry Fiorino. Larry, are you there?
I'm here.
It is so good to be talking with you. You and I just got back from a trip to Vegas with some other friends celebrating a 60th birthday party, but that is not why we're on the phone today.
It's not?
No, we're not going to be talking about what happened in Vegas because, as everybody knows, what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas.
Stays in Vegas.
And we were there with our wives, so it's all good. It's all good.
Yeah.
But the reason I asked you to come on the phone with me is, as you well know, I've interviewed dozens of successful chiropractors as well as some other highly successful business people for the podcast. And you agreed to come on because, you and I have been friends for so many years. And as I have said to you on occasion over the years, you frankly are one of my personal heroes because of your stories, because of what you've created, built, and sold, and some of that information we went over in the introduction. But I really want to spend the time, and thank you for taking the time, to share with some of the listeners basically how you've done what you've done. So before we go too far, so what year did you graduate college?
1984.
Okay, so 1984, so sometime in the latter part of the last century. And when you got out of college, did you go into business or you had a degree that you were working in? What were you doing right then?
So I had actually started college as in physics and electrical engineering as a double major. And at some point, I just lost interest in that area of study, and I wound up switching to finance, became a CPA. So I started out actually in doing accounting, public accounting.
So you graduate, and that's amazing. And becoming a CPA is not an easy thing, as anybody who's been in business knows. There's a lot of study and work there. So you became a CPA, you got out of school, and you got a job doing what?
So I got a job as an accountant and doing audit work. And I really, the audit work was just not something that held my interest for very long. I always felt like I was just sort of double checking somebody else's work.
Exactly.
So I got into cost accounting, and from there worked in a plant actually for a company called W.R. Grace. And I loved working there. I loved working side by side with the engineers that were there. But we all had a collective problem, which was we had to produce financial statements on 4 or 5 week closing periods, and the system that I was using just didn't produce accurate statements quickly. So that's how I got into programming, because I taught myself how to code, and I built the system. I worked with the engineers, and I basically worked myself out of a job. So I built the system, and I could produce statements in a matter of hours. And then I really had nothing else to do, right? I was sort of out of work at that point. So then Grace, to their credit, started giving me other projects. And Price Waterhouse was the auditor. Price Waterhouse came in and they said, "Hey, who built this thing?" My boss said, "That kid over there." And I wound up working at Price Waterhouse in their consulting group.
And then let's fast forward a little bit, because I know at one point then you found yourself working for a nationwide home builder.
Yep. Yeah. So Ryland was implementing Oracle, and I was Oracle certified because of my work at Price Waterhouse, and they I got recruited actually to go work for Ryland and wound up sort of working my way up through the chain to become their national VP of technology.
And I remember at one point you had told me a story, and I'm really hoping you'll share it the way that I remember it, about a conversation you had with your boss about what Ryland Homes really did.
Right. So I mean, I really saw them as a technology company that built houses. That was like the perspective I had, and I was very upfront with hey, you pay me, right? You want me to think about technology and how technology can enable home building and mortgage and title and so that was the conversation I had with my boss, where one day he said, Larry, I think you see this as a tech company that builds houses, but we're actually a home builder that uses technology.
and, and as I remember the story, that became a pleasant parting of the ways.
Well, after a while, I wanted to actually take the IT department and spin it out as a separate company and make it a profit center. But they, correctly so, they really wanted to stay a home builder. So I wound up, it took about 6 months, but we just sort of gave each other a lot of time, and I, spent 40 hours working on my new venture and zero, like over time, just like 39 hours and 1 hour on the new venture, and then 38 and 2, gradually over time, I spent less time with Ryland, more time on the new business, and as they hired my replacement.
So, and as I remember the story from you telling me years ago, somewhere along the way, you came home and said to your wife, who's a wonderful, delightful lady, I have an idea for a company. Yeah. And basically what I've got is my cell phone and my truck. And she said, well, you go ahead and do that. If you got an idea, you run with that. I can carry us for a little while. Is that about how it went?
Yeah. She's amazing, and she's an attorney, so she does very well. And she said, hey, I've got us for 6 months. You can. So that's what we agreed to, was that I had 6 months to get this business started. Ryland, by the way, was moving to California, and we didn't want to move. Our whole family is back east, so it actually, the whole thing really worked out well. Like the universe really took care of us.
All right, and well, you can call it universe, call it God. I think we all live under the grace of God, frankly. So okay, so now fast forward. So we're in that 6 months. What did you build?
So it was, I sold the only thing I had, which was hours, and just started, going to networking as many times as I could, and just trying to, find clients and get them signed up and do tech consulting. And that went well, except for, I guess, maybe 30 days in, 60 days in. One day I got home and I could tell my wife was, quiet, and so after dinner, we had 2 small kids at the time. They ran off, to play. And Chris said, hey, I need to talk to you. And right then I knew, like, I must have done something wrong. And she said, how we had that whole 6-month thing? She said, I can't deal with the stress. So she said, I need you to go find customers in the next 30 days. And that was the kick in the pants that I needed. And I actually got a client the next day, because I just sat down and I said, look, Ed, I need you to sign this contract, so then he was like, fine, let's get started. So that was the motivation. And she's actually done a number of things that motivated me throughout the years to be successful.
I love that. That is so fabulous. Now, you also shared with me a story that I think is really, really relevant, that over the years you had gone to many meet and greets.
Sure.
Business after hours, all that kind of stuff, where you're meeting people, and you had told me, and I hope it's okay that I share this, that frankly, sure, you in those days you weren't the most outgoing person.
I was not. Right. But I needed to do this networking because I was starting this business. Right. So I was going, sometimes 2 events a night, every night, at least Monday through Thursday.
And you're going to the events, and you had also told me that you would much rather have been home with your wife and young children.
Correct.
So what's the deal that you made with yourself?
So one of the things that I would definitely throw out there as something that's key for being successful is acting with intention in everything you do. So Chris, once again, gets all the credit here. She sat me down one day and she was like, "Hey, we got 2 young kids and you're out every night at these networking events. That's just not going to work." So she said, "How about if you get 2 and I get 2, right? So you're home 2 days a week, 2 nights a week, and you're out networking 2 nights a week." And I said, "Sure." But then I thought, okay, how do I make sure that this is successful? So what I did was I said, all right, my goal is to meet new prospects. So I'm going to decide that if I get 2 prospects, 2 cards from 2 people that I don't already know that are legitimate prospects.
So 2 good, solid leads,
I can leave. So that became my goal, where I didn't have that goal before. And having a goal changed everything. So then what I started doing was I just started going to these networking events. And I also found out something else, which is a lot of great networking happens early, right before the event actually starts.
Mm-hmm.
So I started getting there earlier and earlier. And what happens is a lot of other people are there early, but they're not, all their friends aren't there, right? And I've noticed that at a lot of networking events, people just talk to the people they already know, which to me doesn't necessarily make any sense. So I started going earlier and earlier, and then specifically just looking for people, and I became very outgoing. I just learned to be outgoing. So I just started walking up. I'm like, "Hi, I'm Larry. This is what I do. What do you do?" And what happened was I actually started getting good enough at it that I would have my 2 leads sometimes before the event even started.
Yeah.
And then I would just head home. So I wound up being home 3 or 4 nights a week and doing the networking all at the same time. But the reason was because of my wife and also having a goal.
Yeah. What you just said is absolute gold, and it applies in so many areas of life. It's not just business. And it is certainly in chiropractic. When you're trying to meet people, you're trying to let people know about your office. What you just said, so often we go places and we look for people we know that we can go and talk to, but that's not why you're really there.
Correct. Yeah. And you can always talk to those people after you get your 2 leads.
Right. You have their phone numbers. Call them later if that's what you want to do. That's not why you're there.
Yeah. And what I started doing was I started networking with the people I know over breakfast or coffee or lunch and doing one-on-one. And I found that was so much more effective for both of us. So I would go to the events to meet people I didn't know, and then I would go to have coffee with people I did know, and that really worked well.
Right. And the beautiful thing about meeting someone for coffee is it can be a meeting as short as 10 minutes or it can be as long as 2 hours.
Yep, absolutely.
So you can accomplish what you need to, and if it's not going where it's supposed to go, that's okay. There's an easy out.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I love that. So let's fast forward. So that was back then. Tell me what makes your business unique now.
So the company I'm working on right now is 5 years old, and we automate sales teams. And so I think the reason we're unique is because, and I know everybody says this, but we are hyper focused on our customers. So when we started out, all we did was help our customer generate a quote, right? So a lot of our customers are engineers, they're selling equipment, and they need a way to generate quotes. So we started out with quoting, which I'm sure, even though I can't see them, all the people listening to your podcast are probably yawning right now, right? So, but what happened was we just got really focused on being great at quoting. And then because we have these daily conversations with our customers, they started really driving our product. So I would say, even though we're 5 years old and the pace is picking up more and more, I probably get 2, maybe 4 emails or phone calls a week from one of our customers saying, "Hey, can you make it do this now? Can you make it do this now? Can you make it do this now? So we have a very long list of things that our customers want our product to do. And what's amazing is a lot of times it is supplanting competitors where they're like, hey, I use this tool for this. I don't want to do that anymore. Can you do that? So because we're responsive and we answer the phone and we take in their suggestions and we build what it is they ask us to build, and then we always give them credit. Like I will name a new feature after the person that suggested it, and they love that, So I would say that what makes us unique is now we have gone from quoting to order tracking, shipments, commissions, backlog, integration to financial systems. We have an artificially intelligent predictor that will tell our customers 9 out of 10 times whether they're going to win the job or not. It's right. So
That's
now
amazing.
they know. So now they can quote with confidence. We built a tool. This was also a suggestion from them. We built a tool that actually reads documents for them and comes back and tells them the things that they're selling that are in this specification, because sometimes these engineering specs can be 1,000 pages.
Sure.
Where our tool reads those specifications at a clip of 15 pages per second.
That's amazing.
So it's all because of our customers. So we do have a very unique value proposition now, where in the beginning we didn't, but we just kept driving towards providing value to our customer.
So what's really interesting is you said something that several of my other chiropractic guests have said in the past, which is being hyper-focused on your customer and giving them what it is they want. And by asking them or listening to what they're saying and filling the need that the customer perceives, our patients perceive as there, the practice grows because you've heard what your people are asking for.
Yep, absolutely. And that is 100% true. The other thing that I think is important for being successful is you have to be brave. We just brought on one of our, the largest customer we've ever brought on. And yesterday we had a meeting going through open items, and I said at the end, I was like, hey, are you happy with our product? You've got to have the guts to ask that.
Oh,
right?
absolutely.
Right. You've got to, so we're just constantly, gathering feedback, and he was like, I'm loving it. And I said, well, that's awesome. What can I do to improve? So you're just always trying to get as much information as you can, because it just makes anything you can do to make your customer's life better is good for you and it's good for them.
Yeah, exactly. So our time is running away from us. I got to ask you, so Larry, having been in business and built and sold so many successful businesses, and I'm a true believer that business is business, whether you're talking about technology, healthcare, running a restaurant, business is business. And you being so wildly successful, what would you say your 3 keys of success are?
So I would say intentionality. Approach everything with intention is one. Like just from what we've talked about in terms of like getting the 2 leads before you leave. I really believe that it doesn't have to be this big, over-planned, complex thing. But anytime you're doing something, you want to be successful. You want to make sure that you use your time as wisely as possible. So I think being intentional about what you're doing is critical. I would also say being curious is important. Like the people that I know that are really successful are all very curious, right? They're very interested in how things work and how markets work, or how technology works, or how, Robert, like how a person's body works, right? You've got to be curious about what's around you, right? And, be curious about your customers, be curious about what you're doing, I think is another. And then the third, I would say, is I think it's important to be kind. Believe it or not. I think you have to be empathetic, and you have to think about the people around you and what's important to them, and what's important to you. And I know you probably weren't expecting to hear that, but I think being successful, you have to be it's easier to be successful, I would say, if you're a kind or you're a good person. If you really have other people's best interest at heart, they will want you to be successful because they will know that you are interested in them, and it's got to be genuine.
Yeah.
But if I had to pick three things, I would pick intentionality, being curious, and being kind. Now, there's a couple others, but that's my top three.
I love all three of those, and I couldn't agree with you more. I mean, and it is so true. And again, I just agree with that completely. So I want to ask a question, which is, so with all the things that you've done, how do you define, so now it's a very left brain question, how do you define business success?
Well, I think you need to work in a business that values what you value. So I really, try to make sure that everybody that works at Rep Order Management, where I am now, or any of the other companies, that we're all sort of we all agree on what we're trying to accomplish. Like profit, of course, is part of why you're there, right? Because you need to pay people, and they need to be able to afford mortgages and houses and children. So you've got to be good at that. But I think there's also, it's got to be a team. You've got to value every person, and you've got to treat them with respect. So to me, if you're in an environment where the people you're working with are aligned and are happy and understand the goals and believe in your company, you will be successful. And that's how I look at success.
I love that. So if that's business success, let's flip that on its head. How do you define personal success?
Everything for me from a personal perspective is it really starts with my family. So if I feel that I'm successful if I can support them and provide for them and give them opportunities that maybe I didn't have, for my children. But I also think that success is time together. And for example, my kids are grown now, but they were all extremely active, as almost everybody's children are. So they were playing soccer and football and lacrosse and had piano recitals and stuff like that. And I made it a point of, I probably wasn't at 100% of them, but I pretty sure I was there at least at 99% of them. It was rare that I ever missed something, because I would leave work early, go to a piano recital, and then work till midnight, right? So that I could be at that piano recital if I had a lot of work to do. And I have to tell you that from a personal standpoint, that made me, I can't tell you how much peace that brought me when my kids were going off to college, because when they go off to college, it's gone. Like you have the opportunity to go to that piano recital or that soccer game, and then you don't. And if it's gone, it's gone.
Yep.
And the fact that I could say to myself, you know what, you were there almost 100% of the time, and you still, like to this day, I'm playing golf with my son this Sunday. I think having that kind of relationship makes you successful, because you are at peace with what you have done and the kind of person you are.
So, and I couldn't agree with you more. And again, I have seen you be a father for decades now, and you are that guy. It's amazing, and it's clearly, I mean, you are a role model for so many people that we both know.
Well,
my question is, as time is running down on us, so with the keys of success that you've laid out, the intention, being curious and being kind, and having started, built, and sold multiple highly successful businesses, and with the definition of business success that you've laid out, rolled into your definition of personal success, which I love all of it, My question is, can a person who's just getting out of school now, is it possible for them to become highly successful the way you have been? Or has times changed and it's gone now?
I think there's more opportunities now than there were before. There's so much that's going on in terms of new technologies that are coming out, but also new businesses. I really believe that anybody who really jumps in and is curious about the world around them and is willing to treat people with respect and be kind and really try to think about what it is that they're doing and why they're doing it. I think the sky's the limit today and it will be 100 years from now, and it was 100 years ago.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. So my final question then, Larry. So if somebody has listened to this and they go, you know what, this Larry Fiorino guy, he's you know what, he's motivated me. Like I think I can do this. I think he's right. What would you say to them? The first thing that they need to do is, what's their first step?
So this has always been my first step, and I think it would apply to a lot of people, maybe not to everyone, but I would say you got to jump in. I have met with lots of entrepreneurs who are writing business plans and they're doing all these things to get ready to start their business. And that, more often than not, my experience has been that those folks are held back when they should just be jumping in. Mm-hmm. And then I know other entrepreneurs that just jump in. They just start going to the networking events. They start going to the trade shows. They start meeting people. They're saying, hey, I'm thinking about building this kind of company. Would that be something you'd be interested in? Would you become a customer? Just getting started is I think half the battle. So I would say, jump in. If you've got a great idea, go for it.
I love that. I got to share a personal story as we're finishing up. When I was first looking to open my chiropractic practice, I had an idea where I thought I wanted to open it. And right across the parking lot was one of these large big box hardware stores. And I went in and introduced myself to the manager. I said, would you mind if I stand outside and just speak to your customers for just a minute or two? I'll be very polite, very respectful. I just want to get an idea of if they think this would be a good idea, a good place to open a chiropractic office. And the manager said, sure, doc, have at it, whatever. So
that's great.
Right. So I stood outside of this big box store, and it was long before Home Depot or Lowe's were a thing on the East Coast of the U.S. And just started meeting people. And because I also was very introverted as a younger person. And what I learned is people are really nice. Yeah. And when you're kind and respectful, they absolutely want to help you. And some of those people did end up becoming patients in the chiropractic office. They were thrilled knowing that they were there at the beginning and helped to form the new company. Wow. Everything you said is absolutely true. I couldn't agree with you more.
That's a great story, Robert. And that's, plus you were brave, right? You went there. You were intentional, you were brave, you were kind, you were respectful. It's all the things we've been talking about. That's a great story.
So, yeah, Larry, I know we've run over from what we said we were going to, but yeah, as I said, you're one of my personal heroes. You're a dear, dear friend of mine. Mr. Larry Fiorino, thank you so much for taking the time and making the time to do this interview today.
Absolute pleasure, Robert. I'm happy to help. I feel the same way about you.
All right, buddy. Talk to you soon.
Talk to you soon.
All right, bye-bye. All right, and that's our show for today. If you have a question about today's show or your own practice, feel free to reach out at fortheloveofchiropractic.com. Before making changes to your practice, be sure to seek legal advice regarding those changes and regulations in your state. For the Love of Chiropractic is an RGF production, all rights reserved. And thanks for listening. Original music provided by Hunter Rich Music.